Trade talks with the U.S. remain suspended as we head into a new year. So how likely are they to resume? Well, speaking yesterday on Rosemary Barton Live, which produced a lot of news, Dominic LeBlanc, the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, said the next round of talks will probably be the official CUSMA review.
The next time that there'll be direct engagement on the trade issue is likely to be as the beginning of the CUSMA trilateral review in January. So that's important too, to recommit to that agreement. But if ever in those conversations there's an opportunity for the Americans to agree to something that would be in their interest and in Canada's economic interest, of course we're all in and ready to do that work.
Okay, time to bring back the power panel. We've got Amanda Alvaro, Kate Harrison, Anne McGrath, and Rob Russo. Rob, that sounds like we're in for the long haul, right? Yeah. Which is what Ambassador Hillman said when she announced that she was leaving. What do you take from this?
I think that's grim news for people in the steel industry, the aluminum industry, the automotive industry. Yeah. I also think it's going to make the job of the Prime Minister in terms of attracting international investment that much more difficult, because the uncertainty is what's keeping a lot of the money on the sidelines. Look, if you look into the next year and you try to calibrate what's going to cause the Prime Minister and the government problems, this is one of the big deals. The uncertainty over the future of our trade relationship with our biggest trading partner, and the fact that we're now in a protracted trade war with our biggest trading partner, is a drag on the economy. Up until now, the Prime Minister gets a pass, even though he made a promise that he was going to deal with Trump, right, that he was going to deal with him by a certain date. The truculence of Donald Trump absolves the Prime Minister, in the minds of many voters, of responsibility. However, when people lose their jobs and their jobs don't come back, that poses a danger to the Prime Minister.
Can you get around some of the capital uncertainty if it's for expansion to European markets, to Asian markets? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's easy or replaceable, but is there an opportunity there?
No, I think the reason why he's in favor of a bitumen pipeline, and I know there are doubts about this, it's because he has to be. Yeah. You're going to need that capital. You're going to need that
double
investment.
Exports to non-U.S. markets.
You cannot leave that in the ground. You need that money. You need that investment rolling in, and you need the revenue that is going to come from that if we're in a protracted trade war with the United States.
So, Anne, this kind of connects a bit with our earlier conversation about the majority, the hunt for a majority that makes obviously the situation caused by the U.S. far easier to deal with if you have political stability at home. But how do you interpret what we heard from Dominic LeBlanc, what that means people should brace for in this country?
Well, I think it's not unexpected, for one thing. I mean, you know, and I think that people will understand, I do anyway, why you would not want to look like you're too eager to pursue something right now. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, you don't want to look too eager, but the other is that Trump is not doing well. He is actually doing very, very badly, and things could change in the next little while. I think that the danger point is exactly what Rob was talking about, and that is the loss of jobs, right? So what I would think would be the most significant thing that they could do right now is, you know, cool your jets. Wait for don't look like you're dying to get into this and go into the CUSMA, but make sure that those workers are made whole during that period of time. Like, there is a lot of money being sloshed around in the Canadian economy right now. Direct some of that towards the workers who are losing their jobs. I think that that's really, really important. So if they can do something like we've been talking about transforming EI now for like decades. It absolutely desperately needs to be transformed. Like half of Canadian workers don't even qualify for it. So there has to be a program to help those workers. And then I think that they could probably make their way to the CUSMA negotiations. And I think also by the time they get there, there will be less appetite for severing ties with Mexico. I think that and I think it is stronger with Mexico in there.
Yeah, well, and there's a trade mission to Mexico. And look, workers in steel, aluminum, auto, they would qualify for EI. It's just whether it's enough, right? You know, and that's the big question there. But, you know, Kate, when you look at this, you know, first Ambassador Hillman, now Minister LeBlanc, that's after Canada Day, right? Like, this is the outcome at every stage Canada wanted to avoid because they wanted resolution on the sectoral tariffs prior to that whole thing, because you don't know where your economy is going to be, no matter what's happening in the U.S.
Well, that's certainly what they claimed to want to avoid, and it is what the Prime Minister ran the election on, was that there would be certainty in the trade relationship moving forward. And now to hear, you know, his top officials say, well, it's going to be many months away and potentially half a year away, like, we are very, very much departed and divorced from the narrative that he ran on. And so while we might not consider that, you know, to be novel or unexpected, I think it would rightly take a lot of Canadians by surprise that the Prime Minister, who said that he was going to strike out and achieve a new economic and security deal, is content to let that slip. Let's also keep in mind what will happen next year, which is U.S. primaries. So if we are waiting for this renegotiation, that is very unlikely to be ratified on the U.S. side, because they're going to be in their own election cycle. That adds to the instability and the uncertainty that Rob is talking about in terms of investment here. So I think we're talking about the economic risk. There's, of course, a political risk as well to the Prime Minister in terms of what he said he would do during the election campaign and the reality that we now have. And lastly, I just have to say, this idea that Donald Trump is going to, you know, find religion and treat Canada with some goodwill and CUSMA is foolhardy. He's been pretty clear about what he expects of Canada, and I don't know how waiting for a CUSMA renegotiation to have him say the very thing that he's been saying already for the past year is going to have Canada emerge from that any more successful.
I'm shocked to hear such doubts about the winner of the FIFA Peace Prize. But, you know, Amanda, the CUSMA review tip over is July 1, right? That's when it starts that formal process. The midterms, which Canadians have been counting on to apply pressure, that's not till like November 3rd. Right? That's longer from now to then than Donald Trump's been president. And I have to check my ticker here. He has 1,131 days and 18 hours remaining in his presidency. So this timeline that's ahead of us of like 6 or 7 more months before the negotiations maybe begin in earnest, and then 10 more months, 11 more months before there's midterms, a whole lot of damage can get done between now and then.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things between now and then that will provide some signals. The lead negotiator is expected to report to Congress in January about what the administration will do with the deal. So that'll be one signal, hopefully a revealing signal, so that there's some there's less concern about the unpredictability factor. I think that, listen, Canadians have given this Prime Minister a lot of room, a lot of space, a lot of grace, actually, coming off of some of his election promises, because we're dealing with a completely unpredictable entity, not knowing, you know, who's going to show up at the table, how they're going to perform at that table, will they stick to their word, like all of that. And because Trump gives us so many moments of that, I think Canadians have been really respectful of what the Prime Minister has been trying to do. I don't think, you know, Kate used the word content to let it slip. I don't think anyone is content. And I don't think this government nor any of the officials that have been involved in these negotiations are acting like they're content. In fact, that's why they're trying to do trade deals with other nations in order to diversify some of those deals. That has become critically important. Trying to get some of our resources to other markets, that has become critically important, while doing the thing that Anne has suggested, which is we have to take care of our people. We have to, you know, supplement the incomes of some of those people. We have to make sure that we're supporting the steel and aluminum industry. That's what the government has been focused on. But, you know, none of that is easy to digest when you're looking at the months ahead. I think that the most important thing that this government can do is be really clear, really transparent as those talks get underway. The last thing I'll say is I thought it was interesting that Dominic LeBlanc corrected or clarified, and he said this isn't a negotiation, it's a review. I thought that was interesting language to use, and I wonder how they're going to shop around that idea that, you know, this is just being reviewed. Even Hillman responded saying, I'm not alarmed, you shouldn't be concerned, we're going to head in the right direction.
Well, I mean, yes, Rob, technically on paper, this is a review, but I don't know if technically on paper that matters to the president, right? Because he wants to reopen it and change
it. It's a review of an agreement that Donald Trump said was a great agreement 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, look, I think the one thing that might give them cause for a little bit of hope before November is that right now the political trajectory of Donald Trump is an uncontrolled descent into the earth because of affordability. Because people are paying more than they feel they should at the grocery store. And so they should feel that way if you look at the price of beef and poultry and other things like that. That may compel somebody like Donald Trump, who doesn't like to lose, who is, it seems, cognizant of the fact. He said, I think yesterday, the day before, that it's going to be tough to win the midterms. Might compel him to take another trajectory, particularly if tariffs and the lack of a trade agreement with Canada and other countries are what's sending him and his trajectory on that uncontrolled descent into the earth.
Do you think his weakened political state, though, leads to compromise, or a cornered animal fights harder?
The next little while, I think, is a time of great danger. The next couple of months in particular are a time of great danger. And I would say the same thing for Mark Carney in that, it's great to talk about trade diversity, great to talk about artificial intelligence, but you go anywhere, even in Ottawa, even in closeted Ottawa, people are feeling the cost of living. It's right there. I think that's the issue that he needs to address very quickly in the new year.
So Amanda talked about people giving the Prime Minister grace, right? And all of this with the U.S., not his fault, but it is his problem, just like it wouldn't have been Pierre Poilievre's fault had he won the election. It's Trump's fault. He has destabilized the world trading order. How long does the grace last, though? Because people eventually get to a point where if their circumstances continue to deteriorate, they just get mad, whether you did it or not, because it's not fixed.
Yeah, and the question will be where they direct that anger. There's another kind of potential pressure point that's coming up, and that is the decision on his ability to impose the national security tariffs.
Right, the Supreme Court decision that's coming up, right?
Which should be coming up soon. And I think so there are a number of things that are coming up, and certainly what's been happening with some of the elections that have been happening for governor and for mayor of New York and all of those kinds of things are a pressure point. But I think Rob is right. I think the key one is affordability, and you're right. It's affordability is the issue here. It's the issue in the United States, and I think that the more that people can see that Trump's actions are actually increasing the affordability challenge is going to be a problem for him. And so I'm not sure, I think that anger will increase, but I'm not sure where it will be directed. I think that at the moment there is grace for the Carney government, and but I go back to my earlier point, I do think that they have to be careful about how they talk about things like the floor crossing. And, I do think arrogance is going to be a problem. So they have to be confident, but not arrogant.
Right. So Kate, just what's your sense, like, in terms of how long that grace, to use the phrase, can be extended in this? Because, the Prime Minister's personal numbers are still very high, even if party numbers are kind of tied. And in a lot of the sub-level data, they do see this as a Donald Trump problem more than a Mark Carney problem. Is there a tipping point on that sentiment, do you think?
Yeah, so, we're coming up on 3 quarters into the government's mandate. And again, I think when they are now already forecasting that it's going to be at least a half year before this is fixed, that's going to give Canadians a moment of reflection, I think, and be a bit of a flashpoint and have them question whether or not the government is equipped to lead and whether or not that they're in a good position to get this done. So I suspect, sadly, that we're going to see continued news of layoffs, continued news of sectoral tariffs having an impact, and businesses moving south of the border. And to Rob's point, perhaps particularly at this time of year, the economy and cost of living issues are acutely felt by so many, and all of the promises around future pipelines and future deals and the economy of the future is not relief today.
Yeah, we have had these sort of counter-intuitive, though, jobs numbers. I know mostly part-time, not full-time. It's a hard economy to try to get a clear assessment of, right? So, Amanda, on that, if full-time jobs start to go away, part-time jobs perk up more. To give you the last word on this, on the grace question, what's sort of the horizon for that? To Kate's point, it's another half year before whatever happens with CUSMA starts to happen, and probably nothing on the sectoral stuff between now and then.
Well, for anyone who's directly affected by it, anyone in the aluminum and steel sectors, every single day is a day too long. So I think it's really dependent on where you're at in your life and how it's affecting you personally. That's how much grace you're willing to give. I do think that the government's communication style, how they communicate in the new year, is going to matter so much. Can you transparently, with as much confidence as possible, I'll borrow Anne's word, share with Canadians where things are at? This government has tended to be pretty insular with their communications. And I think when you are giving grace, at the very least, you want information. You want to be educated to the best of your ability about what's happening. And I think the government would do well to consider how they're going to get information to Canadians so that they understand that even if the horizon is long, it's there and they can see it.
Yeah, if you want burden sharing, you got to have information sharing because people got to know what they're shouldering, right? That's exactly where we are. All right, where we are is we are out of time. I want to thank you all. Amanda Alvaro, Rob Russo, Emma Grath, and Kate Harrison. Thank you so much.